Next up, we are going to move to our Investing in the Global South panel. I mentioned we've got Ron from Nuo Capital. Kadir is here somewhere. Maybe we'll try to pull him in as well. Alessa Berg, I think, from Top Tier Impact, global network of impact entrepreneurs, and Michelle Chavanga, who we were hoping to join us. Timing has been tricky, but we've got my dear friend, Simeon from JLS Fund, Simeon Schnapper from JLS Fund, one of the larger mental health investors with a big focus on psychedelics and have many farms in Africa as well. So let's welcome them up. Everyone is coming from a different perspective on investing in the Global South. I'm going to have to step out for a moment, but I wanted you to each introduce yourselves, your organizations, and where that investing in the Global South fits relative to what you're doing. And then talk about some of the challenges, opportunities, and specifically, I think for this community, some of the maybe surprising or unknown, undiscovered opportunities that folks who aren't already in the space and place might not have thought about or considered. So maybe we'll start with Simeon, go down with intros, and then take it to the bigger picture. Thank you.
I just forgot all of your questions. But with that being said, hi, everybody. Pleasure to be stepping in for somebody I was really looking forward to listening to. She's beautiful, brilliant, and represents a lot of the really cool sustainability things in Africa. So yeah, day job, investing with impact, mostly around psychedelics and mental health. Psychedelics being at the forefront, but getting into brain-to-computer interfaces and non-invasive neuromodulation. But when they come back to the person I'm filling in for, so my connection to Africa was my folks met there. My dad was the first Peace Corps volunteer in Nigeria. My mom the first in Ethiopia. Early life was always a part of it growing up. Back in Filth, when we eventually settled in Chicago, there was never a day where there aren't 20 refugees sleeping. Sometimes I'd even take the floor. So just always had a very strong inclination towards that continent, and then now 54 countries, soon to be 55, and trying to do as much around that, whether it's investing. Elliot mentioned a bunch of farms. We still need agriculture for a lot of the medicines in the world, so making sure those are sustainable. But I can never feel the shoes of the colleague who was about to speak. So I will pass the baton over for introductions to Alessa. Good to see you after a couple of years.
Good to see you, Simeon. Hi, everybody. It's great to be here, seeing a few familiar faces and some new ones. I am Alessa Berg. I'm the founder and CEO of Top Tier Impact. At Top Tier Impact, we have a global impact and investment lens on what is happening across all continents, so various pockets of climate. We have the network side, and then in terms of investments, I've been active for now 2.5 years across emerging markets with development finance institutions, funding debt and equity, especially now in Africa. So for example, in Africa, we got familiar with the space, collaborating on $100 million debt investment for a fintech company. It was the largest debt investment in history in Africa. And that really opened my eyes and ears to understanding the transition. So we're now in the process of setting up a fund in energy transition in Africa with partners who've been on the ground for decades. And the energy transition situation is extremely exciting in terms of what is to be done and what can be done. Not just for energy transition, we'll probably talk also about farming, agriculture, and how Africa can turn from being a net importer of food to a net exporter, because it has all the ingredients to be in that place, and it is about time. And so just to set the context, I think that when we reflect on some of the various stats that you have on Africa specifically, there is 15 years ago where for smartphones, for phones, you could have put that in Manhattan, right? Like the amount of people who had phones, proper phones like ours, not iPhones, was the size of Manhattan, and now it's in the hundreds of millions. And so I could share various numbers like that for the energy side as well. But this is meaningful, this is big, and it's so different than what we are doing across Europe and the US. I started my career at Goldman Sachs and at Blackstone in private equity, only covering Europe, only covering partially US. So really not familiar with these numbers, really not familiar with this market. So I lived in Asia, I'm Swiss Brazilian anyway, so I grew up in Switzerland, I reconnected with Brazil more recently on the ground. And so I think that for a discussion on the Global South I will have today, setting the stage by realizing just how different and what a different magnitude the problems and the solutions have across the Global South is very exciting to me. Great to be here.
Oh, good afternoon or good morning, depending on where you are. First of all, thank you for this incredible opportunity to hear all the other panelists. I have to say, when you're working hard, running numbers, reading all these things, you're not aware of all the conversation that are actually going on. So I think I really appreciate this forum that is really exposing that stuff. So my background is engineer, financial engineer, and happen to be very lucky to be at a point where in both of those cases, involved in very transformative sort of circumstances that really helped me to form my opinions. And my early regret is that was way too late. But late is never, now is, we don't have the opportunity to go forward. So the lowest experience I had was the world that I was really very much in touch, and that was the global structured products, which was really the innovation that helped U.S. and the West grow very, I think far beyond where it could have gone. When you look at it from the 1970s to, essentially your 2004, 2005, and then you saw that collapse right in front of you. And then you start questioning whether the financial system that we're built, is it really structured to really bring in the best way for us to optimize allocation of resources. So that's number one. And I know data is not information, information is not knowledge, knowledge is not wisdom, wisdom is not action, action is not a yes, and yes is not satisfaction. When I recognize that some of the smallest people in the world, including our largest banks and the Fed and everybody else, was totally in the dark in terms of the monetary system that we rely on. And that taught me something. I said, I actually gave my resignation when I recognized that there has to be a better form of money. And that's, I think, some of the discussions that I just recognized today, there are some other people alternatively getting there. And that is resource-based evaluation of value, right? And when it's failed, and every time you see the economy failing, you're seeing that the supply chain, and again, the supply chain being very local, cooperatives, putting this stuff together and then aggregating. So embedded finance became my goal. So, that's where you're seeing, essentially from cradle to grave, ability to evaluate information and give credit and debit. And that credit and debit is no longer just money or goods, but it's how those goods are created and not. So, and neurocapital was created to create that transparency from a small level up. So we have, took all my eggs and put it in one basket and tried to do what I now call New York finance. And that is, I'm trying to do what BlackRock did for securities for what I consider a very minute type of transaction and bring it up. So think of your credit cards, think of your mortgage, think of your, when essentially a purchase power, when you do essentially a purchase agreement between one party and another, how do you really ultimately, can the rest of us invest in those type of things that can we make our own choices rather than the banks that are not really capable of anyways and do that? So I'm focusing on bringing embedded finance and financial wellness as a B2B to C to Africa, because I think that's the largest number of population and that's the largest of impact we can make today, because that's today's bottleneck. The farmer is not getting the money to put the seeds on the ground. They're not getting money to be able to then process those things and get it to the marketplace. And that is really the friction that we need to solve to be able to have that transformative economy that we're looking for from ground up. So anyway, we can talk about that further. Originally from Iran, left with no cash in my pocket, came to LA and got lots of degrees. Then I found out those degrees were not that valuable when you get into the real world. So my wife says that I'm a Virgo that is transforming to be like the rest of you, who are creative, I'm more intuitive. So anyway, I'm more of a systems engineer and wanted to see all the facts, and I couldn't find those in financial world. I decided maybe it's time to put it together.
Hello, everyone, and good afternoon. And thanks to organizers for this beautiful venue. It's really so amazing. So I come from, my name is Kadir. I come from Turkey, and but I live in Dubai for 17 years. I run my family's impact fund based in Dubai. So we invest in social entrepreneurs, which is committing to UN Sustainable Development Goals, and also to the other funds, which is investing in the same angle. So of course, to come to the point where we set up this fund by the family, it goes back to a lot of ethics and even legacy that my previous generations created. Like, I'm the third generation entrepreneur, and I was able to practice growing up, seeing my family's business practice, because I engaged from the early age, and then I was always observing from age 5 that my father was giving attention to the impact of what he's doing. Like, for example, like, my father is a real estate developer, and so like, when I was 5, 6, I remember going to some sites with him, and then he was he was planning the project in his mind, and then later on I observed age 5, 6 at the age 5, 6 that he was developing a satellite town, and then he crossed some road while there was a like 20 years old tree, and then later on I observed he splitted the road and he didn't cut the tree. And then so when you observe this from the age 5, 6 and similar practices, then you're having that kind of mindset. I mean, it's very important that you got the idea from the early age, and you're being third generation, you're looking for other motivations. And so we have found sustainable development goals very much aligned with our family values, and then we set up the fund. So now we believe and we want to invest in, we are investing in, I think, next generation businesses actually created based on doing good without harming. For example, I see oftentimes an effort in the food space okay, let's go vegan and, reduce carbon emissions. But then I can see the practices oftentimes, they don't look from the health perspective, you're eating vegan, but I don't know how much it helps. I mean, it's not well studied, the side, how it impacts your health. So I think we have to. I mean, every business, every capital we deployed, we have to make a good due diligence on how you're giving the community and what will be the output beside the financial returns. We don't. I mean, I'm sure. I mean, reducing carbon emissions is not only the thing that we can do as an impactful capital. So like we addressing the water problem. So we do on the water side, we do on the education, health, and also we are making sure the founders, those founders are have well understood and practice of being a social entrepreneur. I said we don't want to create another billion-dollar company that at the same time creates tomorrow's problems. We have to make sure they're not harming, and they truly, we have different return aspect. We are more in long term, and also like to touch upon the point. The global south is a huge opportunity, because I have invested several times, and I'm from Turkey, so Turkey we can consider it starting of south. I do a lot of things in Africa, in Southeast Asia. Most challenging geographies, most opportunities. Where the most opportunities are. So be creating economies without. I mean, with good impact and also the good return, and I see a lot of opportunities. I'm happy to share after the panel if someone interested. Thank you. Yeah, so really rich kind of array of experiences and practices and areas of focus. But given that we, with so many wonderful folks and a shorter panel, love to leave folks with what are some things to think about when considering investing in Africa, things that perhaps make it something to look at that folks who maybe haven't considered it, I think I said Africa, but the global south more broadly. What are some things what are some perspective shifts that helped you see the opportunities there that perhaps were a surprise on your journey?
Yeah, some of the surprises I've seen in the global south, and specifically I'm spending majority of the time in West and Central Africa and a little East Africa, so can speak to that. So besides flight delays, it's like we're all human. We all kind of want the same thing. So I've seen a lot more similarities. And then I had exposure to Nigeria, Ghana, Togo, Ethiopia, Eritrea before it was Eritrea when I was growing up. So for me, it might be a little different. But now that we're so mediated and everybody has a cell phone, I was in a Cameroonian pygmy rainforest ritual a couple months ago, and it was like, you're checking your Facebook? What? So like that whole concept of us being completely separate and separate cultures is still there, and it should be appreciated. But what I've noticed is, kind of this opening and consistency and just the human species for the few more years we have it before, the AI overlords take over.
Well, on that inspiring note, I will go into a few investment-related points, but really they bridge to the culture as well and the reality on the ground, starting with Africa and then talking about also Southeast Asia and LATAM. So presence on the ground to really embed in the local reality, and these should be a given. But I think in Africa is an absolute must, because what we see with energy projects is that owning the product life cycle, so being there for project life cycle, following up, and managing it is something that most financial investors don't have in Africa, but it makes a huge difference. And that's something that we have learned and observed over time, like with our partners. I think that there is a little bit of a scale issue as well in Africa, actually, compared to Southeast Asia, partially compared to LATAM, because achieving scale with these projects in solar, wind, hydrogen is tougher than it is in other places for a variety of reasons that I won't go into, but that's part of the development of the ecosystem and the development of the market. And I think that this gets to the point of not just like a presence on the ground that humbly tries to really understand, but also developing the ecosystem, being part of that development. I think this is happening more and more. It's definitely happening on the venture capital and the early stage startup side of things. Project finance and debt is different, but overall, I think contributing through that. So that's been, to your question, something that we've seen in Africa more than anywhere else. If you compare Southeast Asia, and I've lived 3 years in Asia myself, every country in Southeast Asia is a completely different reality. The way that Thailand manages their land in the long term, the more I spent time there and I got to understand it, the more impressed I was. Indonesia, I wouldn't say impressed, but like very interesting to understand like where that is coming from. And so there is no replacement, but just absorbing the culture and then getting our frameworks adjusted for that, with a mix of already having people who are from there on the ground, but ourselves as well. Because I was just sharing in my previous talk earlier this morning that we are all translators, we're all bridges, one way or the other. And here we're in this condensed climate week and we all get each other, we're all on the same page. But once this intense bubble finishes, we're back to our places. And it's different there. And that's where this translation work begins. And that is where syncing up and coordinating with each other to support each other makes a difference. This is why, by the way, the network part of Top Tier Impact is present across the world. We have members in 50 countries. We've been in the Global South from day one, 5 years ago. Why? Because we have to learn from each other, because that support is key.
Thank you. And sorry to ask.
Could be short.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. I think I'll go back to embedded information and embedded finance. I think what is today possible was not possible literally 5 years ago. So a lot of the stories, but pay for stories. Still, if you guys drink good wine, normally you may not even appreciate the wine, but you appreciate the story behind it. So I think there's so much that if you're doing transparency from let's say local to global, and I think you would find it a lot more financeable than it is today. People are worried about country risk. How do you get over, credit barriers that we have created ourselves through the banking system? And that's where you need to go back and figure out, can we do off balance sheet? Can we do really invest in the product, invest on the people that are building it? And I think that's where we see the opportunity. We don't need to have a rep 3. Rep 2 will do the job if you do the job of willing to share. And on all value structured products, if you were provided more information, we get more investors. And that's really where I think I'm going to first focus on that. Can I bring that to the marketplace where all of you guys can put your money where you really want to put your money on?
Kadir?
So I think everything starts with the mind shift. And as a third generation, I wanted to invent, a new way of looking at business, how we can create value for the people and how we can make things profitable, And when we come with this mindset to the global south, I believe in oftentimes. Our taxes are not really reaching to people, in all around the world, and this is even more. In the global south. So I think we have to impact in people at first place, give to the people at the first place. So one of our practices, I can say, in Singapore, like I have a portfolio in Singapore, which is operating in Mongolia, and they transform gear community from coal to solar. So we give access to community, energy access to community, which only heating. Now they have also energy access because, and through this transformation, we're generating carbon credits, and those carbon credits are purchased by the most polluting ones. So you impact the society at first place, and you open for them new channels, new way of thinking, because if you don't have enough for your basic human needs, you don't really think of other things. You need a space for yourself always to do other things. But when you lack of basic human needs, you don't really think to going to Howard.
What I'm hearing there, and it's interesting, everyone's sharing a different version of the same concept. What I'm hearing there is really like listening to the context that someone's in. Even Simeon's point about people are like, he's spending time there, and Alessa's point of, it actually ties back to a theme that's been here from the first moment we started today. It's about relationships. It's about actually weaving those webs, building those bonds, and and everyone's coming from a different perspective, working in a different place, but it's ultimately trying to bring care and good to people in different contexts, but seeing we're all human. Sorry to cut things short. What a wonderful collection. Let's give them some love. Thank you.